subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as the contents for the complete text. Thus, in the Bhaktivedanta purports to the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of its contents. Chapter 3. Arjuna uvacha jayase chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tat kim karmani gore mam niyo jayasi keshava. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddhi Yoga, or Krishna Consciousness. Sometimes Krishna Consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddhi Yoga or intelligence in spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, or work in Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter, text number 2. Vyamishinheva vakyena buddhim moya yasivame tat ekam varanishtitya yena shreyo ham apnuyam. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. Purport. In the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruitive desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna therefore wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. Text number 3. Sri Bhagavan uvacha lokesmin dvidada nishta pura prokta mayanaga jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. Purport. In the second chapter, verse 39, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga, or Buddhi Yoga. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. The other class of men work in Krishna consciousness, as it is explained in the 61st verse of the second chapter. The Lord has explained also in the 39th verse that by working by the principles of Buddha Yoga or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action. And furthermore, there is no flaw in the process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddha Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme, or more specifically, on Krishna. And in this way, all the senses can be brought under control very easily. Therefore, both the yogas are interdependent as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna, because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super self. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. And the other process is directly connecting everything with Krishna and Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process. And by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. Text number 4. Na karmanam manarambam naiskamyam purushosnate nacha sanyasanareva siddhim samarigacchati. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Purport. The renounced order of life can be accepted when one has been purified by the discharge of the prescribed form of duties, which are laid down just to purify the hearts of materialistic men. Without purification, one cannot attain success by abruptly adopting the fourth order of life, sannyas. According to the empirical philosophers, simply by adopting sannyasa or retiring from fruitive activities, one at once becomes as good as Narayana. But Lord Krishna does not approve this principle. Without purification of heart, sannyasa is simply a disturbance to the social order. On the other hand, if someone takes to the transcendental service of the Lord, even without discharging his prescribed duties, whatever he may be able to advance in the cause is accepted by the Lord, Buddha Yoga. Swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate bahato bayat. Even a slight performance of such a principle enables one to overcome great difficulties. Text 5. Nahi kaschitchanamapi chatutistanya karmakrit karyate yavasa karma sarva prakriti jaya gunai. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Purport. It is not a question of embodied life, but it is the nature of the soul to be always active. Without the presence of the spirit soul, the material body cannot move. The body is only a dead vehicle to be worked by the spirit soul, which is always active and cannot stop even for a moment. As such, the spirit soul has to be engaged in the good work of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it will be engaged in occupations dictated by the illusory energy. In contact with material energy, the spirit soul acquires material modes. And to purify the soul from such affinities, it is necessary to engage in the prescribed duties enjoined in the Shastras. But if the soul is engaged in his natural function of Krishna consciousness, whatever he is able to do is good for him. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17 affirms this. Taktva Sadharmam Charanam Bhujam Harer Bhajanla Pakvo Tapate Tato Yadi Yatra Kvava Bhadram Bhura Mushikim Kovartapto Bhajatam Sadharmata. If someone takes to Krishna consciousness, even though he may not follow the prescribed duties in the Shastras or execute the devotional service properly, and even though he may fall down from the standard, there is no loss or evil for him. But if he carries out all the injunctions for purification in the Shastras, what does it avail him if he is not Krishna conscious? So the purificatory process is necessary for reaching this point of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sannyas, or any purificatory process, is to help reach the ultimate goal of becoming Krishna conscious, without which everything is considered a failure. Verse number 6. Kamindriyani samyamya yaste manasa smaran indriyartam vimudatma mityachara sauchate. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Purport: there are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness, but make a show of meditation, while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers. But according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order. But if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification must be called the greatest cheater, even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy. His knowledge has no value because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. Text 7. Yastindriyani manasa niyam yarabate arjuna karmendriyai karma yogam ashakta savishishyate. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Purport: instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime swartha gati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna and Ashrama is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. Text 8. Niyatam guru karma tvam karma jayo yakarmana sharira yatrapi chate na prasidjed akarmana. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Purport: there are many pseudo-meditators who misrepresent themselves as belonging to high parentage, and great professional men who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. Lord Krishna did not want Arjuna to become a pretender. Rather, the Lord desired that Arjuna perform his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatriyas. Arjuna was a householder and a military general. and therefore it was better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for the householder Kshatriya. Such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. So-called renunciation, for the purpose of maintenance, is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. After all, one has to maintain one's body and soul together by some work. Work should not be given up capriciously, without purification of materialistic propensities. Anyone who is in the material world is certainly possessed of the impure propensity for lording it over material nature. Or, in other words, for sense gratification. Such polluted propensities have to be cleared. Without doing so through prescribed duties, one should never attempt to become a so-called transcendentalist, renouncing work and living at the cost of others. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for such a wonderful reading, and would like to ask devotees if you have any questions. Yes, Mother Gita, please go ahead, Mother.
Hare Krishna,
Hari
Prabhu.
Bol,
Accept
Gita.
my humble obeisances
My
always to
Srila
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada.
Thank you so much for the reading. I was looking at chapter 3, verse 5.
Okay.
In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, as such, the spirit soul has to be engaged in the good work of Krishna consciousness. What is that good work? Thank you.
In the way that Srila Prabhupada is saying it, and I can hear his tonality in my brain, good work. It's like almost like good work, nice work. Like I learned something from when working with some inner city kids one time, and we had a representative from the local county to come and speak with them. He was a motivational speaker. So he said to them, whenever they did something good, he would say, GOODJOB, good job, good job. Because the other things they were doing, which were taking drugs and having gangs and fighting each other, was bad job, bad job. So he taught them what was a good job. So Prabhupada is telling us the good work, because there's no bad work. Okay, there might be how someone could see it. There is no comparison. There's no bad work in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is Krishna consciousness. Conversely, there's mundane consciousness. So Krishna consciousness is a good work, good meaning it yields a positive, beneficial result. I heard a definition once about success, because sometimes a person who robs a bank can say, I was successful, I robbed the bank. Or the person, beats up another person. I was successful because I beat him up. So this gentleman said, success is the realization of a goal or dream. But then he said, I changed it after I realized that anyone can say that something is success, killing a person successfully, tearing down a government successfully, just like what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. Putin could say, I successfully took over that country. That's not success. So this gentleman changed the definition. He said, success means this progressive realization of a worthwhile goal or dream, not just any goal, worthwhile, beneficial for others. So the good work of Krishna consciousness, because there's no bad work in Krishna consciousness, as Prabhupada just says, anything you do in Krishna consciousness is good, because it keeps adding up, adding up, adding up. You never lose what you gain in Krishna consciousness. So it's good work. Why? It's beneficial. And it's the most beneficial because it's long range, long term, eternal benefit. Unbelievable. Whatever we complete in this life, suppose we complete 10%, next life we take it up, 11%, you keep going. And you keep going until you get 100%, and then you go back home, back to Godhead. So that's my understanding, Gita Maharaj, is that the good work of Krishna consciousness is good work. Mundane activity is bad work, right? Yagartha kamanonyatra loko yam karma bandhana, right? So you get bound up in the cycle of birth and death by this material activities, and you become free by devotional activities. So that's how I would understand it. Anybody else want to jump in and share some thoughts on that? Good work of Krishna consciousness. I just can see Prabhupada saying it. Good work of Krishna consciousness, not the bad work of mundane consciousness. Is that okay, Gita?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Haribo.
Thank you, Prabhu, for explaining it so nice and such a nice question. And what I like about Mother Gita's question, she really tunes into the word and pulls it out, and then we're like, oh, I just missed that word. That was a really nice catch. Thank you, Mother. Any other questions from devotees? Any other clarification that you would like Prabhu to shed some light on? Prabhu, I have a question about the verse that spoke about pretenders.
Yes.
And there are many of us, some of us, and I've also heard situations where we get allured by pretenders and we don't know, like we're not aware. And we go on and go on and go on. And I don't know if it's, the person that is being allured is innocent. So in that situation, how can they help themselves? Or if we recognize, how can we help them? Because, they just innocently believed the pretender.
That's why it's critically important that we encourage people to, if you're speaking about someone who is trying to be Krishna conscious and they get allured, that's one classification. The other one's mundane people who are just, their whole life is being allured. It's just, that's all they do. In either case, whether they're mundane people running after sense gratification like all of us were, and then we met someone that put some sound vibration in our ear and gave us a different way to look at the world. So for a devotee, it's the same prescription for the mundane person as for the devotee. I put it to you like this: Shravanam. Shravanam will protect you. Just like if you want to buy a diamond, Shravanam will help you. Hearing about what a diamond is, what it looks like, what are the textures, what's the price values, and all that kind of stuff. Same thing for a devotee. You want to become Krishna conscious, you must hear. You must hear repeatedly, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, constantly hearing about Krishna, constantly, as much as you possibly can. So then by that hearing process, when Maya comes to us, we can do what Swarup Damodar Maharaj taught us in Atlanta when he was living there as a brahmachari. He told us a story that how he grew up in Manipur as a young brahmachari, because he never got married his whole life, okay? Nice sticky brahmachari, never got married. So he taught us brahmacharis. I'm not sure if Bhattacharya Maharaj was there as Ganesham. He might have been there at that time because it's around 70 something. So he taught us about how to deal with sex desire. Because he said in his village, the boys never looked beyond their feet. Why? Because they wouldn't see any beautiful woman, nothing. So they would walk like that with their head down, looking at the tips of their toes. So we used to practice that a lot, Like I famously refer to myself that when I was a brahmachari, I didn't know what the Maharaji's looked like. I just knew their feet. I could tell any Maharaji by her feet or shoes, but not the face, So we were practicing that. Then he explained the scientific part of it. He said, if a desire comes into your heart, take the time to analyze what will be the effect of pursuing this desire, being allured by this thing. What will be the effect? And you start, analyzing. So he said, by the time you finish your analysis, that desire will subside. Because the allurement is it's like instantaneous, like, wow. But then you said, wait, let me think about this. If I do this, this will happen. If that happens, this will happen. That. So in my case, I think, oh my God, if I did that, I'll lose my chance for Krishna consciousness. I've invested 49 years and just throw it away. I get really scared. I get really scared, like, oh my God, I better be careful. Then I also think, I said, if I slip up too much, then my grandkids will lose respect for me. My son will lose respect for me. My wife will lose respect for me. Devotees, I just started, and I said, oh my God, I better stop. I need to catch myself here. So that's how I deal with it. So when you tell someone about those techniques of how to deal with those issues, starting with hearing, the best instruction we can give anyone is to hear more, study more. That way you'll be able to, like Sankhya philosophy, Srila Prabhupada referred to that the second chapter talks about Sankhya philosophy, right? And that means the ability to discriminate between what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. And you get that by hearing sufficiently. Another place in the 5th canto, when it talks about entering the forest of material enjoyment, there's a whole section about like an analogous presentation. But in that concept, it's all about intelligence. And intelligence goes into this forest of material enjoyment, means material life. And we expose our intelligence to all these things, and we learn how to do so many different things with our intelligence, and we get lost. So that same intelligence, if it goes into the association of a devotee, a sincere advanced devotee, then they will learn. And just by hearing, Srinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Sravana Kirtana Ridyantasto Bhadrani Vidunoti Sarisata. Just by hearing, and when the Lord sees that you've developed the urge to hear, Ridyantasto Bhadrani, he cleanses the heart. Really, he cleanses the heart. The Lord cleanses the heart. We don't have the power to do it. So the Lord does it. But he does it when we sufficiently hear. And then the question will come, well, how do you increase the ability to hear? Then he says, and it says in the Bhagavatam, by rendering service to those devotees who are pure at heart. Great service is done. And by such service, one gains the affinity for hearing the messages. Like we don't have a taste for hearing. That's the problem. We can hear for 5 minutes and then, we can chant our rounds for a little bit and we get all distracted. But when we get that taste, which comes from rendering service to the advanced devotees, then the hearing becomes nectar, becomes like you can't wait to hear. So those are just some thoughts about it. Always encourage people to hear. Like when I first started coming to the temple, I was explaining this to a young devotee today. I was a wreck, sense gratification up to here, all kinds of stuff. Because I was a musician, I was running around anyway. So devotees never told me, stop doing that, Bhakta Ben. You'll never be able to be a devotee if you don't stop this, that, and the other. No. They said, take this book, take that book, take this book, take that book. And I would read. And I tell the story and I'll finish with that. I was smoking the marijuana and all that kind of stuff, right? And I was reading Bhagavad Gita. No one had ever told me I had to stop until I read in the 3rd chapter. This chapter, isn't it? Isn't this the chapter we're reading? And then Prabhupada says, I believe it's verse 22. I always forget the number of the verse, but I believe it's verse 22. And or is it 21? 21 is, who knows 21? What is the Sanskrit in 21? Come on. No one knows it? Yad yadacharati shrestat, tatari vataro jana. But in 31 or 32, forgive me, I know I'm taking a little long here. He says, oh boy, sorry, I always forget. 37. The essence of what Prabhupada says there is that people try to imitate Lord Shiva. And by imitating Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva is known to have smoked ganja. And then Prabhupada said ganja, and in parentheses, he said marijuana. And I was like shocked. How do you know about marijuana? So then he says, by smoking ganja, one calls death near. And the moment I read that, because I had been reading up to that point, I had been chanting up to that point. So when I read that, I stopped all my nonsense, and I have never touched anything in my life since that time. But it wasn't because I invested time in hearing constantly. Devotees were encouraging me, always read, study. And I was intelligent enough to give up a major sense gratification in my life. So for those devotees who might be, as you're saying, becoming allured by this, allured by that, increase your hearing. That's all you have to do. Nasta praisa badresu, nityam bhagavata sevaya, bhagavad utama sloke, bhakti bhavati naistaki. All the inauspicious things in the heart, all that allurement stuff, gradually destroyed to nil. Why? By regular attendance in classes on Bhagavatam, and again, rendering service to the pure devotee. All these things are moved by Krishna's grace. I'm sorry it took so long, but you made me think of a couple of things there.
Not at all, Prabhu. We were enjoying it, absolutely. Before we end the class, we'd like to ask devotees, you have any questions to ask Prabhu before we end? Any comments or clarification that you need?
I'm still working on coming for your Kirtan festival. I'm working on it. Don't think.
My daughters just asked me this morning, Prabhu.
I'm working on it. Did you get in touch with Sukada? Did you speak with Sukada?
Prabhu, I have not. I have to contact him this week. Yeah. I will.
Yeah.
I have not. It's been on my mind. I have to contact. Yes, Mother Gita. Please, Mother.
When is the Kirtan Fest?
Mother, we have one on April 23rd. Spring Kirtan next month. This is something new. We just started the spring. And then we have one during Kartik, which is the second Saturday in Kartik.
Wow, too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
normally we do one, but Chandramali Swami, when he came the first time, and when he found out that we were doing one, he said, Anasuya, you want to do more than one? So I said, yes, Maharaj. So, and after 3 years that I'm trying to implement it, I'm slow. So he says, the more you have such kirtan, the holy name will draw more. So
Absolutely. People have to have faith in the holy name. It's not us that's attracting people. It's the holy name. Oh, it's anyway. Let's not start that. That'll be a 10-hour discussion. Especially Gita will get excited about this, and she'll jump in on that discussion.
Mother Geeta, you're most welcome to attend our spring kirtan next month if you can on April 23rd. And then we have one in October, the second Saturday of in Kartik. And I just got a call yesterday from Vishnupada Prabhu, and we were discussing something else. And I reminded him, and he told me, don't forget to invite Balabhadra Prabhu. I said, no, I will not forget. We got a date for our Rath Yatra.
Oh, really?
On July 7th. We are starting it up after 2 years. Sorry, July 9th, right there, Krishna?
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna. July.
Yeah.
July 9th. Okay. I'll put that in my calendar too.
You're going to be busy, Prabhu, coming down to the East Coast. I mean, like where we are at.
What's the closest airport to Harrisburg? I'm just thinking in terms of Gita, if she would like to think about coming.
To
What's
the
the closest?
airport, Prabhu, it's Harrisburg, but I think it's always very expensive. So we always request devotees to fly into BWI or Dulles, and it's an hour and a half from here. And
From Dulles.
we've always arranged for somehow we always bring devotees because it's so much. It's literally $150 to $200 cheaper.
Okay.
It's definitely worth flying into BWI or Dulles, not into Harrisburg.
Okay.
Even though they have one here, but I never encourage that. Yeah, it's so expensive. I would love to have all of you come for our Rath Yatra on July 9th.
Beautiful.
And just to remind devotees, tomorrow we are celebrating the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, Gaur Purnima. Invite devotees to the temple tomorrow evening. The temple will be open tomorrow from 1 p.m. on so that others can come and take darshan. And until then, we wish you all a very happy Gaur Purnima. Thank you so much, Balabhadra Prabhu. Thank you to all the devotees for joining us. Vanchakaputubhyascha kripasindavevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai Shri
jai.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Hari Bol.
Jai. Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Mother
Krishna.
Geeta. Hare Krishna, Dear Krishna.